Everyone, welcome to the second webinar in our presentation here on how to master your CRM data, where today we'll be focusing on the 5 levels of D365 customer data management. If you did miss our last webinar, we have that Martin presented on the trends and predictions for 2025, and you can find that on our YouTube channel, so be sure to check that out. And the final thing is, if you have any questions, please feel free to ask along the way, and hopefully we'll be able to pick them up at the end if we have some time. So let's crack on. So what are we going to look at today? Well, today's objectives. First, we're going to look at the good, the bad, and the ugly. So how to distinguish good and bad data within your system, and we have some examples. We're going to look at some real-world examples, as it's better to learn from other people's strategies then learn from our own mistakes. So we'll look at those. And then finally, we're going to look at practical strategies and some key takeaways that you can use to begin to scope or start thinking about a DQ project. And it'd be great to hear your thoughts along the way. So just quickly, who are we? I know a lot of people on the call already know DQ Global, but some people might not. We're a Microsoft ISV. We help organizations who are fed up with the time it takes to overcome the challenges with data and data quality, or really people who are concerned around GDPR that came up, a good few years ago now, but the AI world that we're moving into, also so reliant on data and its quality. Or we find that we're working with people who are frustrated with the time it takes and the money that's been invested into CRM, only to be let down by the quality of the data. Just a little bit about me or the company, and myself, Conor Doyle. I head up sales here at DQ Global, and hopefully I can provide some interesting points for discussion today. So let's start. What is good and bad data? It'd be interesting. People put some thoughts in the chat. Who has opened the CRM bonnet and tackled their data quality challenges? Now, I've seen a few people on the call that we work with, so I'm hoping that people are responsible and have been impacted. And actually, are both of those things that you've seen. You are responsible and you have been impacted, and you've done something about it. So it'd be interesting to get your thoughts in the poll that should have just popped up. So, unfortunately, what we have is this great data quality delusion. A lot of people on the call don't fall into this category because you're all here today to learn and listen. But actually what we see in a lot of organizations that's still alive and kicking is this delusion that, everyone understands the importance of data quality. Everyone agrees that data quality is important, not necessarily. And everyone cares about data quality, and everyone's willing to do something, take action to improve the quality of the data. Now, it's a little bit slapstick, but this is how we actually feel it looks like. And I know some people on the call might have seen this in their own organization. So a little bit of a joke, but this is still happening to this day. So I'm innocent, so it must be someone else causing those issues. So what do some of those issues look like in people's databases, and what can we do? So we've picked out the top 4 reasons why poor quality data occurs. So reason 1, no surprise, is human error. Probably one of the biggest challenges. And here are some, again, slapstick answers that people have had to some data quality challenges. So here we have a boy's name beginning with the letter J, and you can take a guess. We've got Gerald, could be spelt differently. A word beginning with Z, and people have come back with xylophone. Name a part of the body beginning with N. We've got the knee, the classic. And during what month of pregnancy does a woman begin to look pregnant? We've got September. A valid answer, but all spelt differently and just human error as we go along. And this is super common. We've got reason number 2. We've got misinterpretation and lacking data standards. We'll come on to this a little bit later. In one system where you have M equals to male, but in another system that means married. And unless you have context or you have a standard, you're not sure what that actually means. And this is a big challenge when you're going through a data migration, that you have context behind what the data actually means. So some more examples there. A very common example, you've got US, USA, U.S, United States, and we worked with a client who had 7 different variants. Very hard to work with the data, segment the data, all because of these non-standardized and lacking pieces of data that are lacking standards. Reason number 3, and anyone who works in Dynamics will feel the pain here, where you have these Boolean fields, okay to mail or okay not to mail. It's a real twister. You have to get your head around it, certainly after a coffee, and actually understand what this Boolean logic means. I've certainly got myself twisted in it in the past. And anyone logging in, anyone who works globally, formats when it comes to European or US date formats, common issues when you're trying to migrate or when you're trying to query databases, and it can be a real headache. So again, some common challenges. And this is one very dear to our hearts. We work a lot in the deduplication space. So the same thing, but not the same string, where errors have been introduced, potentially through human errors, which goes back to reason number 1, on different spellings. So look at Thompson there. I know we have a Thompson on the call, spelt in all different variants, and I'm sure everyone has their own ways that they're spelling names, places, or things. And you can see that this provides a huge challenge. And this is tough, okay? This isn't just something that people on the call are seeing a challenge with. There are some very big research projects that have been done, and there are some stats coming out of there. So I just wanted to share those and hopefully make you feel a little bit better, but also you can share these internally. So we see that 56% of firms mention questionable data quality as a major challenge. And that's recently, that's from 2024. So over half the organizations. We've got 47%, so just under half of newly created records have at least one critical error. Again, that's from HBR, no small source there. And quite surprisingly, we've got 84% of CEOs say that they're concerned about the integrity of the data that they're making decisions on. So these are critical business decisions that are being made, and 84% of CEOs are concerned with the quality of the data. And that's from Forbes. That kind of ties into this point here, where we came up with this concept about the leaning tower of data. Some of you may have seen this before, where you have the DIKW tower of data. And at the bottom, we have data, which is just ones and zeros. We then have information that we want to derive from that data. So it might be 10 feet. We had 10 as a unit of data. 10 feet, we now have a bit more context. We build knowledge on top of that. And then we have wisdom. So what are we going to do? What action are we going to take out of this raw data? And unfortunately, what we're seeing now is, anyone who's visited the Leaning Tower of Pisa, it is very slanted. If you have broken data foundations, the core data within our CRM systems, ERP systems, etc., when we layer up the app data, the CRM or the ERP data, we have reports and dashboards that are providing us knowledge. When we want to then take action out of those reports and dashboards, we're seeing a distortion from the truth. So those insights and decisions are incorrect. And what is happening with AI when we're making these decisions is it is analyzing all of this data, giving us the analysis. And if the analysis is incorrect, then we're making incorrect decisions far quicker than we used to in the past. And it's just accelerating that process. So we see data as a key factor in leveraging AI to its maximum potential and ultimately making the correct business decisions to drive the business forward. So enough doom and gloom. What do we need to do? So we have a concept around the data management ball of grief. Again, some of you may have seen this. I was talk about this in the past. And I want to focus on one major aspect when it comes to the 5 W's and the how. So we have, Who's responsible for data? Well, it's everyone. What are we going to do? Why are we going to do it? Where is the data? When are we going to action it? And how are we going to do it? Come up with a plan. The aspect that I wanted to focus on here is why. Before we start digging into the data management ball of grief, and we start talking about the 5 levels of customer data management, why are you going to embark on this journey over another journey? And presumably you have 10 different projects that you could run. So where is this going to come in your priority list? And once you understand why you're doing that, then you can start to make sure you're tackling the root cause problem that is ultimately going to drive better business success. We talk about there's not a data quality problem in the organization, there is a business challenge, and ultimately organizations want people to interact with the data so that they drive more revenue. They interact with the data so that they don't have waste, so they have less waste. They're optimizing the records that they can find at the right time. And they want increased compliance. We don't want to be emailing people that shouldn't be emailed. We don't want to be holding records that we shouldn't be. So let's focus on those business challenges and make sure that we're not digging into the technical weeds just for the sake of it. That being said, once you have defined why you are doing this as an organization, you need to start opening up this data management ball of grief. And it's somewhat painful, but hopefully today we'll be able to give you some strategies to take away as to how you can start this project. So in the middle there, you'll probably be familiar with a term called single customer view. That is having one representation of a business, of a person, and actually understanding that person or company in the database. And wrapped around that, you have multiple aspects. So you have, where's the data come from? Is it complete? Is it a duplicate? Is the telephone valid? Is it formatted correctly? And we have all of these different aspects that we need to consider in order to create a trusted single customer view or single record view. Depends if you're coming from the healthcare space or whether you're coming from universities. You may have different terminology, but ultimately we'll want a single trusted version. So there's a lot in there, but let's start to unpick it. So if we can unravel the data management problem, we're going to start to pick apart this path. And if we can break it down to inputs and outputs, it starts to become less daunting. So what does that look like? Well, if you're going through a process, and you can do this internally, and hopefully we'll give you some tools to do this, or whether it's with a partner or other webinars that we provide, we're going to start with a piece of data, and it's going to go on a journey, and it's going to go to a target. And in this case, it's going to go to D365. So we're going to look at maybe an email. Could we format an email? Could we check that the syntax is correct on an email? Has it got an @ symbol? Is there a piece of information that we can parse out from this email because it has .co.uk, therefore we could derive a country of the United Kingdom? Could we authenticate the email, ping the email to see whether it will truly deliver to the domain and that local part, that actual person? Could we enhance the data in some way, shape, or form as a record? Could we suppress the record because it's not correct anymore and maybe someone's died or gone away? Could we match them to find duplicates? Could we apply rules or decision trees? And then finally, should we master data across multiple systems so that we master our data and we do master record management, otherwise known as MDM, master data management? And in order to do that, we may be able to do that if it's a small record set. We might be able to do some of it in Excel, but ultimately, to make your life easier, you're going to need a set of products out there, some open source, some from providers, in order to help you along that journey so that you can unravel that challenge and ultimately make it a lot more simple process. And this is that golden record that we're talking about. So what can we do? Well, this is where we came up with a concept of the 5 levels of customer data management. And no surprise here, we have 5 levels. So walking through these levels, just to set the context, this is important to identify where you are at this moment in time. There is not a right or wrong answer to this. This is about identifying where you are and where you believe you should be as an organization and stepping up to that level over a period of time internally or with a partner helping you. So let's start with the identification of we are blissfully unaware. You know, we're working in an Excel spreadsheet, or we've just implemented our first CRM system, and I didn't even know data quality was a thing because I've always entered the records manually. We have a very small pool, and oh, how some of our clients would probably love to go back to this place, the blissfully unaware. But let's step up to the next level where we go to reactive. And reactive is really where I see organizations going and they say, oh, we've got to send out a marketing campaign and we need to do it next week. Oh, what does the data look like? We go back, we look at the data. Oh no, we've got duplicates. We've got missing data. How do I segment the data? And ultimately, that is a very reactive approach and leads to downstream impacts in terms of when you can actually send out your marketing campaign and the efficacy of that campaign. So absolutely fine if it's a small data set, you can handle it that way. Or if you're not hugely fast moving, that's also absolutely fine. Let's move up then to a proactive approach, kind of that teenage stage where you are going to be looking for challenges around data. That might be duplication, that might be incorrectly formatted data, that might be missing data. You are going to look for it. A more mature approach, a teenage mindset, and really getting ahead of yourself rather than that reactive approach that we've just talked about. We're going to look at continuous improvement, and we're going to look at a use case in a minute to highlight this. The use case is when you're, you've got maybe finished college or you're going to university and you are now entering life. You've got that continuous improvement, 1%, day on day improvement. And this is where organizations are starting to dedicate a team in order to optimize processes around data quality. It might not be a full-time job, but they're optimizing processes or technology as the organization grows. And we'll look at a use case in a second. And then we've got the wonderful Yoda knowledge enterprise-wide, where really we're an adult now and we're looking at data quality as a dedicated team. We're looking across business applications. We're looking at augmenting data, really that large-scale approach. So like I said, there's no right or wrong answer through these steps. This is something that we've come up with as a concept to help you identify where you are and potentially where you need to get to in as an organization and walk along those steps. And how can we do that and what should we consider? So let's take a look at that. So here's a continuous improvement. Here's a recruitment use case where we worked with an organization, and you can see here from May 2020 to January 2022, a whole load of support tickets coming through where records had to be merged by the support team. So these are duplicate records being logged. At point one, the business came back and said, these duplicates are crippling the consultants. What we need to do is people need to go and merge these records. And that's a great initiative. What then happened was no one had merge rights. So you see point number 2 is where people actually on the support desk got a spike in support tickets in order to merge records. So that happened, and the support desk saw that happening for the next 4 or 5 months. The business emphasized again that none of these support tickets are being actioned, and there's still loads of duplicates. So the organization went, we need to find a better way to do this. Implement a piece of software that can go and find these duplicates, process these duplicates. And lo and behold, you see point number 4 here is where the number of support tickets drop dramatically because of the number of duplicate records that are being processed. And huge volumes of data here that a support team was never going to be able to cope with. 1,100 users, 7 million records, nearly 10% duplication on those records, which has saved a huge amount of time along that process. And the reason I'm highlighting this is because we have a process that was implemented, didn't necessarily work, and the team had to look for a better way to do that to alleviate the time that it was taking to run through these support tickets. So some considerations, when would we use some of these 5 levels of customer data management? What should we be aware of? Well, timeliness is a huge factor. Should we be proactive or reactive? And that's really down to the question of how crippling is it for your business if poor quality data, let's take a duplicate record, do you need that to be resolved near real time, as in seconds, 5 minutes, 24 hours, or 7 days? Ask yourself the question, because I can assure you, if it needs to be real time, then the cost of the solution in order to make that happen is going to be a lot higher than maybe something that's happening a bit more reactively. But actually, you need to look at what is going to suit your business requirement. And that's down to industry as well, comes into that factor. If it's healthcare data versus retail data, it might have a different impact. The sensitivity of the data, a real question as to whether you can be proactive and automate the process, or whether you might need to be a bit more reactive and you need to send the data to a data steward. We have volume of events or transactions. Are there just huge amounts of data? Can we automate this process? Do we need to manually review it? Or can we look at a hybrid approach? System compatibility is a huge one here. When we're reviewing records that may have been inserted into multiple databases, how easy is it to review those records? Much easier if we're just talking about one system rather than the whole architecture or how the data hangs together. In terms of that strategy of tackling duplicate records. And then finally, I think we need to be realistic around resource and expertise in terms of, is this something that you can architect internally? Is this something where you can plug in a product because it's a well-known source system? And you just need to be realistic with the time it's going to take to implement an enterprise-wide data governance procedure versus something that is proactively working in the database. We're not looking for perfect here. We're looking for good enough, because perfect data is uneconomically viable. So some takeaways. Want you to use these to go back to the organization to inform you in a data quality discussion, if that's the right thing to do fundamentally. So this is a great chart that we found from Peter James Thomas, around the different functions of data quality. So you see here on the left-hand side, we've got data strategy, we've got analytics and insight, we've got data architecture. A lot of people on the call will be involved in those pillars. Today, we're looking at data management, and even more specifically within data management, how do we refine that when we're talking to the business? Rather than this conversation absolutely bloating when we're having an hour conversation, we say, no, we want to talk about data quality and master data management. And even then, they're huge topics of conversations. We need to be able to refine that when we're talking to stakeholders in the business. So here we have data management as a category, and I wanted to drill down this tree. And on the left-hand side, we've got data quality, and on the right-hand side, we'll look at master data management in a minute. Data quality, I see as a single system. Master data management, I see as multiple systems where we're mastering data across multiple applications. We're going to ask ourselves the simple question, are we dealing with customer data or are we dealing with product data? In our world, we're primarily looking at customer data. So what are we going to do with that customer data? Do we need to cleanse the data? We need to be very specific with the terminology that we're using. So again, that conversation doesn't bloat. Are we talking about cleansing phones, emails, countries, addresses? again, we're being more specific with what do we need to cleanse and what is going to have a positive impact on the business. Duplicates, duplicate accounts, contacts, leads, other entities, same story. We want to enrich data. Okay, accounts, contacts, a subset of my contacts. Again, being specific with the conversation so that that conversation doesn't bloat. And then suppression, have people died? Have people moved? Have they gone away? Deceased, obviously very simple to explain. Moved, have people moved house potentially, or have they gone away and we don't know where they are? And finally, product data, not something that necessarily we deal with in terms of a conversation, but again, a huge space and a huge challenge. And then finally, looking at the master data management space, all of these aspects that we've touched on, cleansing, duplicates, enrichment, suppression, but actually across multiple databases. So it might be an accounting package, it might be a CRM system, it might even be an Excel spreadsheet or a SQL database, and taking all of those factors into consideration. So hopefully some takeaways there that you can use to go back to your organization to identify the levels that you're at in terms of customer data management, but also in terms of some takeaways as to how you can be very specific with the conversation you're going to have in your organization to start to scope a data quality project. And obviously, if you'd like some help to bounce some ideas off of us, more than happy to do so, to have a 30-minute conversation, have a look at some of the data within your organization, and also make some recommendations. We've seen a lot over the years, and hopefully we can help guide you along the way. And feel free to reach out to ourselves, or equally, if you'd like to reach out to me on LinkedIn, I'd be more than happy to have a conversation. So thank you everyone for listening. Appreciate you tuning in. Hopefully that was useful, and we shall take a look if we have any questions in the chat. Okay, so we have a question from Stuart here. How can AI help here in terms of input cleanup and or post-save cleanup rules? So as in getting information wrong, key information. I think it's a great conversation, and again, excuse me if I'm quickly interpreting this question. I think AI does have a place to play in this. I think there are some core pieces of data. There might be some cleansing around country information if it's US, USA, United States, where you could be very discreet with what you want an AI agent to do to improve the quality of the data. I think we start to open up a challenge when data is beginning to be fixed by an AI agent, more in terms of the ethics, because if it's modifying the data that it is then interpreting, we could end up with a vicious loop there. I will just throw that out there as a very high level thought, that actually we find organizations sometimes finding a challenge to automate processes with decision logic, very auditable logic, and actually revert to manual review at times. So if we see that as a challenge, I think the next step up is AI. And I think that's going to be a challenge for organizations to adopt that. I think in the future, yes. Are we talking 5 or 10 years? Who knows? We'll see about the evolution of AI and agents in the future, but I definitely think it's coming, Stuart, and I think that's a great question. And happy to take that offline if there's any other questions. Fantastic. I'm conscious of time. Thank you everyone for joining. If you have any questions, please reach out, and look forward to seeing you soon. And we have a webinar coming up in a month's time. Thank you, everyone. Speak to you soon.